What if I told you the reason he is completely obsessed with you has almost nothing to do with what you think? Not your looks, not your effort, not even how well you treat him. Because real male attachment is not created by perfection. It is created by 5 very specific emotional triggers most people completely misunderstand. And if you've ever wondered, does he really feel that deeply about me? Or am I just overthinking it? Stay with this, because by the end of this, you'll know exactly what is happening in his mind. Welcome to Mathew Hussey Insights. Imagine for a moment that the real reason a man becomes deeply consumed by you has nothing to do with your physical looks, how funny you are, or even how smoothly you both get along on the surface. This is where many women misunderstand the whole picture. They believe a man falls into deep emotional love because the chemistry feels strong, or because everything feels easy and natural. While those things do matter at the beginning, they are not the force that pulls a man from simple interest into something far more intense and lasting. That shift is not driven by comfort alone. It is driven by something much deeper, something most people never clearly recognize or understand until they look back and realize what actually happened. I'm talking about the kind of connection where a man sees your face on a random, ordinary day and suddenly feels something heavy inside him that he cannot explain in words. It is the kind of attachment where he cannot picture a future without you in it. Not because he is forcing himself to stay, but because the idea of you not being there simply doesn't make sense to him anymore. This is not about excitement alone. It is about emotional grounding, where your presence becomes something his mind naturally returns to again and again without effort or confusion. Surprising, right? Even more surprising is the fact that many women who already have this level of emotional importance in a man's life do not even realize it. They might be in relationships where the man is deeply attached, emotionally invested, and quietly devoted, yet they still carry a small doubt inside them. That doubt whispers questions like whether he truly loves them for who they are, or whether he is just comfortable. It creates uncertainty even in stable relationships, making everything feel slightly unclear, even when things look good on the outside. If that feeling sounds familiar, understand this clearly. It is not insecurity in the way people usually describe it. It is a natural emotional reaction when you care deeply about something, but cannot clearly measure its depth. You are trying to understand something that was never explained to you in simple terms. You were told to be kind, supportive, easy to love, and low maintenance. But no one ever explained the actual emotional mechanics behind what makes a man shift from casual interest into deep, committed attachment that stays even when life becomes complicated or ordinary. The truth is, there is a very specific emotional structure behind this shift. There are certain experiences and emotional patterns that make one woman stand out in a man's internal world in a way that feels almost permanent. It is not about perfection. It is about impact. It is about how deeply he feels you in moments that seem small but carry emotional weight. And once this shift happens, other options stop feeling relevant to him in the same way. Not because he is forced, but because his emotional reference point has changed. That is what we are going to explore. There are 5 core emotional pillars that create this kind of attachment in a man. This is not about surface-level satisfaction or temporary attraction. This is about the deeper psychological and emotional processes that build long-term devotion. When these elements are present, a man does not just enjoy your company. He becomes emotionally anchored to you in a way that feels natural and unshakable. And once you understand these ideas, 2 things begin to change inside you. First, you stop guessing or overthinking where you stand with him because you begin to recognize the real signals instead of the surface ones. Second, you start to see your own value in the connection more clearly because you finally understand what is actually holding his attention at a deeper level beyond words or gestures. Before we go further, consider this honestly. If you have ever been with someone who said all the right things, showed up in the right ways, and still left you with a subtle feeling that something was missing underneath it all, then you already understand why this conversation matters. That feeling is not random. It comes from relying on surface-level signals instead of emotional depth indicators. Most people assess love using the wrong measures. They focus on how often he says, "I love you," how many compliments he gives, or how emotionally expressive he appears in words. But words alone are not a strong measure of emotional depth. Words are easy to use. They can be genuine, but they can also exist without deep emotional grounding. Real attachment is not proven through language alone. It is revealed through consistency of emotional experience over time. Then people look at time. They assume that if a man spends a lot of time with you, he must be deeply invested. But time can also be misleading. Someone can spend time out of routine, convenience, or habit. Time does not automatically equal emotional intensity. You can share days, routines, and even living space with someone and still not reach that deeper emotional layer where attachment becomes strong and personal in a lasting way. Another common measure is how he acts in public. Does he show you off? Does he introduce you proudly? Does he behave like a committed partner in front of others? While these can be positive signs, they are still not the full picture. Some men are naturally private yet deeply committed. Others may perform the role of a perfect partner in social settings while lacking depth in private emotional connection. Public behavior alone cannot confirm internal emotional depth. So if words, time, and public behavior are not enough, then what actually creates real emotional attachment in a man? The answer lies beneath the surface, in the emotional experiences that shape how he feels when he is with you, when he thinks about you, and when you are not around. These are quieter signals, but they are far more powerful than anything visible on the outside. This is where we begin to understand the real foundation. There are 5 core emotional pillars that shape whether a man stays casually interested or becomes deeply attached. When these pillars are present, something changes inside him. He stops seeing the connection as just another relationship in his life. Instead, it becomes emotionally central to him in a way that feels natural, not forced. The first reason a man falls deeply in this way is because you made him feel something he did not expect. Most relationships follow predictable patterns. Attraction builds, conversations flow, and things develop step by step in a familiar rhythm. But sometimes a woman breaks that pattern without trying. She creates a moment, a feeling, or an emotional reaction that does not fit his expectations. It might be something you said that stayed in his mind longer than expected. It might be a moment where he saw a side of you that felt real and unfiltered, something that did not look rehearsed or controlled. It was not about doing something dramatic. It was about a genuine emotional moment that landed deeper than ordinary interactions. And in that moment, something in him shifted, even if he could not fully explain it at the time. That is the dividing line between a relationship built on convenience and one built on true conviction. When you reach a man emotionally before he has time to protect himself or put up his usual defenses, that feeling doesn't just stay as a passing thought in his mind. It settles deeper than that. It takes root in a way he cannot easily explain or rationalize. He carries that emotional moment with him, almost like an imprint, and it becomes part of how he experiences you over time. This is also why you feel different to him compared to anyone else he has ever known. The interesting part is that you were not trying to create an impact in that moment. You were simply being yourself, but he felt the difference between something natural and something performed, and that difference stayed with him. The second reason is that you gave him a space where he could finally feel like himself without effort or pressure. This is something that is often overlooked, but it plays a huge role in emotional attachment. Most men go through life constantly managing how they appear to others. Whether it is with friends, family, or at work, they are always in some kind of controlled version of themselves. They filter what they say, they hold back emotions, and they stay composed even when they are not feeling that way inside. It becomes exhausting over time without them even realizing it. Then he met you, and something shifted in that pattern. With you, he didn't feel the need to perform or pretend. He could just be real, unfiltered, and relaxed in a way that felt rare and safe. In that space, he could speak honestly without worrying about judgment. He could admit when he was overwhelmed or struggling without feeling weak or less than a man. He could sit in silence with you without needing to fill every moment with words or energy. Even on his bad days, when he wasn't at his best, he didn't feel like he had to hide or fix himself just to be accepted. That kind of emotional safety is not common in most relationships. It creates a sense of relief in a man that he may not even consciously recognize at first. But over time, he begins to associate that feeling of peace and acceptance directly with you. And that becomes something he naturally wants to return to again and again. You cannot be deeply in love with someone you feel you have to perform for constantly. Real emotional connection grows in an environment where both people feel safe enough to be imperfect. When a man realizes that he can fully exhale around you, that he can be seen in his most human and unpolished form and still be accepted, that becomes incredibly powerful. It stops being just attraction and starts becoming emotional dependence in a healthy sense. You gave him a place where he could exist without pressure, and that kind of experience is not something a man easily forgets or replaces once he has felt it deeply. The third reason is that you did not need him in a desperate or consuming way. You entered his life as a woman who already had her own direction, your own life, and your own sense of identity. You had your own interests, your own goals, your own routines, and your own emotional stability that was not dependent on him. You chose him, but you were not trying to fill an emotional gap through him. That difference changes everything in how a man experiences love. There is a huge emotional gap between being wanted and being needed in a way that feels heavy or consuming. When a woman needs a man to feel complete, it can slowly create pressure inside the relationship. Even if she doesn't say it out loud, he starts to feel responsible for her emotional stability. It begins to feel like her entire emotional world is resting on his actions, his attention, and his consistency. Over time, that kind of pressure can make him feel like he is carrying more than just a relationship. It feels like he is carrying someone's entire emotional foundation. And even if he cares deeply, that weight can slowly push him into emotional distance without him fully understanding why. But when you are someone who already has a full life and still chooses him, the emotional experience is completely different. He doesn't feel like he is being depended on for survival or identity. Instead, he feels chosen. He understands that you are not with him because you have no other option, but because you genuinely want him in your life. That creates a sense of respect and emotional value that is much deeper than dependency. It makes him feel like he is part of your life, not the center of your life. And paradoxically, that makes him value the connection even more. The fourth pillar is when you showed up for him during moments that actually mattered in a real and meaningful way. Not during the easy times, not during the celebrations, and not during the moments that look good from the outside, but during the periods when life was heavy, uncomfortable, or uncertain for him. Maybe he was going through a setback. Maybe he was dealing with stress or loss, or maybe he was simply not functioning at his best emotionally. And in those moments, he was not always easy to be around. Instead of stepping back when things became difficult, you stayed present. You did not turn your presence into something dramatic or performative. You simply remained there in a steady way that showed consistency. You did not abandon the connection just because the emotional energy around him changed. You made it clear through your actions that your presence was not conditional on everything being perfect or easy. That kind of loyalty during difficult times leaves a deep emotional imprint on a man. Men often struggle to express how much this kind of support means to them, but they feel it very strongly. It creates a long-lasting emotional memory that shapes how they see you. Many people can be present during good times when everything feels light and enjoyable, but the emotional foundation of a strong connection is built during the harder moments, when things are not convenient or pleasant. You became someone who did not disappear when things became heavy, and that builds a level of trust that is not easily broken or replaced. The fifth and final reason is that you stayed fully yourself even as the relationship became more serious and emotionally important. You did not slowly lose your individuality in the process of becoming close to him. You did not start filtering your personality, your opinions, or your natural reactions just to avoid disagreement or tension. You remained real, even when it might have felt easier to adjust yourself slightly to keep everything smooth. In many relationships, this is where change happens quietly. A woman may begin completely authentic, but as emotional attachment grows, she becomes more cautious. She starts thinking more about how she is perceived. She avoids expressing certain thoughts to keep harmony. Over time, this can slowly reduce the emotional intensity of the connection because the person he fell for starts becoming less visible in daily interactions. The original spark begins to fade, not because love is gone, but because authenticity is reduced. But when you continue to show up as your real self, the connection stays alive and emotionally rich. He is not in love with a version of you that was carefully shaped to please him. He is in love with who you actually are, including your personality, your perspective, your habits, and even your imperfections. That makes the connection feel real and grounded, not artificial. It keeps emotional attraction alive because there is always something genuine to connect with, not a filtered version of a person. Now, understanding these 5 pillars is not just about gaining emotional clarity in the moment. It is also about protecting the depth of what you already have. Even strong relationships can slowly weaken when small habits start to shift over time without being noticed. One common mistake is becoming overly controlled in how you behave once you realize someone is committed to you. You stop being as natural as before and start overthinking how you are coming across. This can slowly reduce the emotional ease that once existed between you. Another issue that can appear is when your entire sense of emotional stability starts depending on his validation. If his attention becomes the only thing that makes you feel secure, it creates pressure in the relationship. Even a deeply caring man can feel that weight over time. Emotional balance has to come from both sides, not just one. When everything becomes dependent on his reactions, the natural flow of the relationship starts to feel heavier. In the end, everything we talked about comes down to something very simple, but very often overlooked. Real emotional connection is not built through perfect words, perfect timing, or perfect behavior in public. It is built through deeper experiences that shape how a man feels when he is with you, when he is himself around you, and when life is not easy. These are the moments that create attachment that lasts beyond convenience or routine. When a man feels something real with you, when he feels safe, when he feels chosen, when he sees your true self, and when he experiences consistency even during difficult times, something changes in how he views the connection. It stops being just another relationship in his life and becomes something emotionally meaningful and familiar to him in a deeper way. At the same time, what protects this connection is not control or effort to be perfect, but staying grounded in who you are, maintaining your own life, and allowing the relationship to grow in a natural and honest way. When both people remain real and emotionally present, the connection does not rely on confusion or guessing. It becomes clearer, steadier, and more secure over time. That is what real emotional depth looks like when it is understood beyond the surface.